What's up, y'all? Today I caught up with Garett Reppenhagen. I spoke with him on my podcast. He was a sniper during the Iraq War uh, and went on to become the executive director of Veterans for Peace. Um, and now he's kind of doing his own thing up in New England. But the I think the memory card on like my camera died out at some point or like ran out of storage. So the video is gonna unfortunately like cut over halfway to like the webcam on my Zoom. So apologies for that, but I think the sound should be pretty good. Thanks, Garrett, for making the time, dude. Sweet. What's up, Garrett? I guess we'll just continue the conversation. We had a little bit of off camera dialogue. But yeah, man, last time we got up was like 2021, I think.
Yeah, that seems right.
Yeah, I was living in Miami at the time. It was like pandemic. I think like mid or late pandemic. And then probably like just at the start of like the Biden administration, maybe. Um, yeah, I feel like it was probably like early 2021 or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, like post J6 craziness.
Yeah, yeah, it was kind of like, I mean, a lot has happened over those past few years. Yeah, I mean, what are you up to these days? I know that you were in Colorado before, obviously. Yeah, like what you been up to in life lately?
Yeah, I mean I was executive director of Veterans for Peace, I think, when we talked last, and I transitioned out of there, and now I'm basically a free agent. My wife owns a gelato shop in Rockport, and I help out with that every once in a
That's cool.
while. But yeah, I'm concentrating on you know, healing my head and getting right, and you know, just trying to be prepared for whatever's next and be flexible, I guess, is really concentrating more on local community networks and mutual aid than thinking about a national policy type fixes at this point. I think it's time to sort of just concentrate on what I could do to build around me and prepare for whatever's next.
Yeah, I kind of took a similar path the last few years. I mean, I recorded like 25 episodes when me and my buddy owned Citizen Truth. And then after a while, I just kind of felt like I was like screaming into the void. I was talking to like a lot of the major activists for Palestine back then, like Ramzi Baroud, Miko Peled, Ahmed Al Nak, a lot of those people that became kind of central to the discussions now. And yeah, I feel like my mental health was just kind of in like a weird position last time too. It was like I was coming out with like one episode of a podcast per week. So I'd be like knocking out a book, coming out with questions. And I was just kind of in this small Miami apartment and like I was tapping into like a lot of CIA history in Latin America
Mm.
and felt kind of like at odds with my surroundings, right? Because like my landlord was Salvadorian and her dad helped like Ronald Reagan bring guns in during the 1980s. So I was like kind of like looking at things from like this anti-imperialistic angle and then like my surroundings were like either like folks that maybe were just like going about their life or whatever like modern a lot of like the modern like American cultural zeitgeist like just like a lack of interest or like understanding in the wider world like kind of focus on the day to day, and then Miami's kind of like, kind of like it's like a Latin American city in America, but like a high concentration of maybe like right wing Latinos.
Yep. Yeah, it's kind of become like a safe refuge point for counter revolutionaries and other folks. So yeah, it's yeah, it's tough. I there's been so much meddling. It's hard to, I imagine, figure out what side to be on if you're and anywhere in Latin America, just to figure out how to like support your future, your family, your country. It's I think it's really easy to like fall into some sort of like um conservative trap,
Yeah.
Um but yeah, it's like can you blame somebody like with all the meddling and all the fuckery that was going on? It's like, yeah, I mean, I don't know. We'll see how things kind of roll out here in the United States here in the next like 20 years.
Mhm. Yeah, I was in Guatemala a couple years ago. I was like with this a German girl on this bar crawl. I'm actually sober now. I got stopped drinking like last June pretty much. But I was on the second or third stop of the bar crawl, and like this dude's just like staring at me, and I speak Spanish like pretty well, but he was like, "Bajo con las mentiras de los gringos," like down with the lies of the gringos. I tried to explain to him. I was like, "Yeah, dude, like I studied a bit of 1980s, Guatemalan history, bro. Like, I agree." It was like regrettable, but he just got louder and louder and louder, and it was kind of an interesting perspective, but yeah. Then on that trip, like prior to that, I was in El Salvador, so like I had seen like the early parts of like Nayib Bukele's like regime down there, and I guess on that same trip I went to Nicaragua too, which was fascinating as well too, because it was
Mhm.
like this kind of dissonance between like the American perspective of events, or like maybe like the perspective of like the Nicaraguans I've met in Miami, versus like the taxi driver that was like, I don't know why America hates us, dude. Like things are going okay. So it's like trying to put together like different, like I think that's been like the biggest um thing that's changed since last time we talked, is just like understanding this multiple kind of nuances of the world, the various shades of gray and stuff. And honestly, bro, I'd probably get to this next part too, because I listened back to our episode a couple times from 2021, and one of the things you talked about was like your deployment in Kosovo was like really positive, I think.
Yeah.
Um, and one of the places I went was Bosnia. I was in Sarajevo, and I was like in Sarajevo around a bunch of Bosniaks that were like very positive, I guess, like on NATO and like thankful for NATO. It was funny because I met like a Serb girl a year later in Nicaragua that was like, I grew up under bombings in NATO, but um, yeah, I like where like in the current state of things, obviously a lot has changed since that transformative experience that you had in Iraq, but like what is like your perspective now? Like maybe you're not as sounds like maybe you're not as like tapped in on the day to day of global geopolitics, because you're like, hey man, I need to double down on mental health and just like focus locally, but like, where are you at on things? I guess. Sorry, that's like a really drawn out question.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I mean, I can't not pay attention. I still read the news or whatever. Just even though I'm not like particularly involved in trying to manipulate or protest a lot of the things that are going on. It's like you said, there's nuance, right? There's a lot of gray area, and most people can see that in their own lives. They could see that nuance in gray, but projected into another country or even across the street, sometimes people don't see that. And Americans have a very binary viewpoint of a lot of things. And if it doesn't fit into the ones and zeros, it it doesn't make sense. um, which is sad because I think that's where most stuff actually lies. The real truth is in there somewhere in between the one and zero. And I don't know. You take Ukraine for instance. Like, I understand the pressures of NATO and the globalization and manipulation of world markets and the demonization of so many countries and societies by the Western world. And also believe in self-defense. And if anybody rolls into somebody else's home and town with fucking guns and bombs,
Get the
then you
fuck
have
out of
the
here.
right to kill them. you know, like that's how it is. So it's way more complex between who's right and wrong. But if it's not your home and you're standing there with a gun threatening and killing people, I think you're fucking wrong.
Hmm.
Um, you take Nicaragua, for instance, like Ortega's, incredible, like, revolutionary hero. But, to lose track of a democratic Nicaraguan voice, and to monopolize, money and markets and things that's also wrong. So
Hmm.
what do you do? And if you're not being realistic about where that middle ground is, I think you become very susceptible to um, the left or right, and at least America, because we don't have a country where 33% of the votes wins the majority and gets elected. We have, this very right and left, conservative, liberal viewpoint, and we try to plug in. I'll give you a question, you tell me where you lie, your opinion on this thing, and then I judge you and give you a political identity and put you on the shelf. And now I don't have to
Yeah.
think about you anymore. Um, and that's frustrating because shit, I don't know about you, but I don't feel like I have any sort of representative voice in like American politics that really truly comes at anything from where I come at it. Certainly there's politicians that hit close on one issue or another, but they don't go all the way, and they certainly fall short on other issues. So um, yeah, I see the whole world in that same light, and um, that's that complexity um, is frustrating to a lot of people because they want to just have that yes or no answer.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. There's a book called The Hypomanic Edge, and it basically talks about how like a higher concentration of like people on the bipolarity spectrum ended up settling within the US, like it was claiming, I guess. So like, and then combine that with like and I don't throw that any shade on that, like I'm bipolar myself, but like the combine that with just like a lack of services for like a mental health and stuff like that. And like when you're not mentally stable, you're thinking in very black and white ways, completely devoid of nuance in the complex reality that we face, right? It's like I'm either a terrible person or I'm God, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, I feel that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've in therapy sessions, use those extremes all the time to, like express myself. And, I'm told all the time, it's like, that seems pretty, yeah, that's pretty out there, the extremities of all these positions, especially when I talk about my war experience. I give myself very little grace to, um, just be a dude,
Yeah, yeah, dude, trying to figure it out.
Hmm.
I think that that's what you also touch on there too. When we were talking about like Ortega or whatever, like the I wonder, like I think to be human is to be capable of great harm and great good, and I think that we all kind of underestimate our capacity on both fronts, you know? And like when you, I mean, I think, what were you born in like the 80s, early 80s,
70s. Yeah.
70, late 70s?
Yep.
So when you went to Iraq, you were like early 20s,
Um, yeah, like mid to late 20s actually, yeah.
mid to late 20s.
Hmm.
Gotcha. Yeah, so like obviously there's a bunch of people a good bit younger than you too, right? And
Hmm.
like we like thrust them into this other country, completely alien culture with like guns and stuff like that. And you know, like in this frame, maybe that like I'm not sure. I don't think everybody. Obviously, the military is a very multifaceted thing, but maybe there's like a frame of like we're the liberators here, or something like that. And it's like once you establish yourself in that superior frame, that higher vibration frame, it's like then you might be able to be overlooking the capacity within yourself to do harm. um like in terms of like your deployment, um and like the ethos of the military at the time, like how many folks do you think like that you're around like studied the history of the Middle East like prior to or during the deployment, or like even of those, like how many like spoke Arabic?
Um, well, I didn't there were no Arabic speaking people in my unit, so we relied 100% on interpreters. Um, I know some vets who spoke Arabic while they were in Iraq, and
Hmm.
they were used by their unit like um translators, but unofficially, right? It's like, hey Bozzy, what that dude just say? Bozzy's not a interpreter. Bozzy's an infantryman, but now like double serving. And I know he just stopped. Like he stopped doing it for his unit because he was just like it was just too hard to be torn and try to, you know, have that window into other languages. But yeah, the soldiers I served with really didn't care to learn about the history. And I don't think it's just a military ethos thing. It's the zeitgeist of just Americanism from that point in time. It's just around 9/11, um, things were laid out by our society pretty well. You're already kind of groomed going into the military as an American soldier. It didn't take a lot of effort for just the US military to try to condition you to think us versus them. Americans were already thinking that. You were joining the military in a surrounded by a culture that was already there. So, most of that's not even supported by the hierarchy of the military. It's supported just by peer pressure of other soldiers around you. Um, so, I kind of hear that a lot about like how bad the military is about brainwashing you into demonizing others. but it's not, there's no like playbook, you know? It's just we just naturally are conditioned to do that. Like you said, it helps us excuse the atrocities that we do and give us a position to where we can maintain our sanity and do awful things. Um, because we're protected by those lies and the myths. I mean, I think that's the first step is to create the us versus them to justify doing harm. You look even just our politics today and the way we're starting to justify harming people just on their political stances and how demonizing we're becoming to whatever the opposite political party is to us in the ability to now justify violence against them. And that's where we're headed, unfortunately.
I think that that part of American culture is something that makes me feel totally alienated from my culture. Like that lack of curiosity. Also, like with the introduction of the social media algorithms and stuff like that, and like, the way that Trump kind of, you know, says these things that go super viral. And, there's been so many examples of people that have kind of have risen to fame with like these extreme, abrasive ideologies. Um, it like one thing that like I'm totally concerned about is like, and granted, like I mean, I was born in '94, so like the the America that I grew up in was largely anti-intellectual, I would say, but it seems like it's kind of getting worse.
Mhm.
Like a lack of uh like critical thought, or like the even desire to be like well read and stuff like that. Like um I don't know, I forget where I was going with that, but yeah, it's that's like a super concerning pattern. It's funny, I actually like I really wanted to be so like right now I live halfway between Wilmington, North Carolina and Camp Lejeune, like the famous Marine base if you're familiar. So I would say like military culture is like all around me at times. But I live in a beautiful place near the water, so I enjoy it. But when I was in like first or second grade, I like toured the Naval Academy with my parents. I was like had my heart set on going down that path. I don't know if it was like playing Battleship a lot as a kid, or like the allure of those white pressed uniforms and the discipline and stuff like that. But growing up, I mean, I was like in second grade during 9/11, and then my dad's like pretty liberal now, but he would play Sean Hannity in the car like all fucking day on the way to school and back. And I think like at some point in my like mind, right? Like I was thinking to myself, like, Sean Hannity and these neocons don't know shit about the Middle East. You know what I'm saying? And like, I think that subconsciously, by the time I was 18, I was like, nah, dude, I'm not fucking doing this, And it's like, I see the allure, like, because like, I think a lot of young people, especially in a society that's like hyper individualistic, such as the US, are like really looking for some higher purpose, or like something to guide them, right? Like
Mhm.
there is like some dope things to discipline, like the discipline that I forged on my own was maybe a little bit more challenging than if it was beat into me by the US military, but like, discipline around my workout routines, my sleep, like dialing in my mental health, not drinking, stuff like that. Like I see the benefits of that, but like subconsciously in my mind growing up, I feel like I was like, ah, this modern US foreign policy is kind of whack, you know?
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, and I agree that there are a lot of people that are looking for that higher purpose to become something larger than themselves, to have a rite of passage, you know. Dogs.
My dog never makes any noise. She's like a cat.
Yeah. You know, we're out here in the rural country and they didn't bark when we lived in the city really.
hmm
And now it's like any passing car is like, this is my land. Just doing their job. Um, yeah, it's like people are looking for that rite of passage. There's no Western world equivalents to, you know, some sort of trial to become an adult, and then there's no ritual to identify that and
I
to
think there was in America, but we genocided that away.
right white America, I guess, is the colonizer America. There was doesn't seem like there's much. Well, certainly not today anymore.
hmm
Um, so yeah, so what does a kid to do to identify themselves as an adult? You know, they got their first job or their driver's license, they drank their first beer, they got laid. You know, what is it that pivotal transformational moment? And then what are the old things that they no longer do as children, and now do they have a seat at the table with the adults and have new responsibilities, and are all those defined, you know? And like you said, none of that's laid out for kids, for young, you know, young adults, so they're just flailing to find that purpose, that drive, that forge that puts them through the crucible and makes them an adult. And Federal Express, classic, dogs barking at the mailman.
My dog hates the UPS truck.
Yeah, so what are kids gonna do, man? They look for those things, and the military recruiters have a giant book of excuses of you know why every kid should join, and certainly they tap into that, you know, army strong, be all you can be, looking for a few good men, like tropes to like, because they know that, you know.
Yeah, well, it's almost like the the answer is ultimately to lead yourself, but it's like, how the fuck do you even begin to do that? You know,
Hmm.
as a young person, like, I mean, I think about it now. It's like, okay, like if I hadn't been poisoned by listening to Sean Hannity in my dad's car for a fucking decade growing up, and like I had gone into the military, like probably would have been terrible, dude, because my mental health, I feel like I didn't get dialed in until I was 30, you know?
Hmm.
So it's like, um, yeah, it's like, and I know, like, you weren't, in that part of Iraq or involved in that, but I was just like reading about that person, Lindy England from Abu Ghraib, and like how she just like said after she got out that she wasn't even sorry to the Iraqis, and
Hmm.
like dug into her history a bit, and like saw that like she was just like moonlighting as like a meat packer or whatever, and then they were like reservists and kind of just got thrown into this like big responsibility that they wouldn't have been ready for, you know? And it's like it's so create like, yeah, what our culture's just not necessarily like equipped, you know, to um put a young person into that type of situation across the world and expect them to do, you know, good things, you know? It's like not that they're weren't some good things that happened, I'm sure, but yeah, it's just yeah, it's a challenging kind of factor. I asked you, Garrett, last time in 2021, um, if you had hope for the future. And it's funny because I was asking that question not as really much for my followers, I realized at the time, but for myself. Because I was, you know, reading just the darkest shit, and like my mental health was not really dialed into the fact that, like, I realized that, like, having a community, exercising, eating high protein meals on a regular basis would get me feeling right and much more equipped to deal with the funny how much that stuff factors in. But in terms of today's day and age, like, what kind of prompted you to saying, like, dude, I'm going to New England, like, I'm gonna just dial in, like, get focused on local stuff and like what I can control and stuff, or feel like I can control more? um,
Um, yeah, give me a second to answer that. Yeah, hope. What brought me basically to Maine to do this now in this stage of my life.
yeah.
Um, I mean, I still always have hope. Um, I think that the world is changing. Obviously, climate change is impacting us, and we've done very little in the last 10 years to try to curb uh, the warming planet and the destruction that's coming. Um, Politically, we're not going in the right direction, obviously, to
Hmm.
deal with a future that I think will promote anarchism or socialism or some next sort of evolution of our society, to prepare ourselves to like really face these challenges in a safe way. Um, I see more fascism being enabled and uh, popularism growing, tribalism, more polarization politically, more hate growing, the loss of individual rights. I did never believe that we really had much of a democracy, but we had um, a imperfect democracy, if you will. Um, and it seems like we're going in the wrong direction. I honestly don't think people are going to wake up and change their habits and demand change of our economic and political systems until there's real crisis threatening them individually. That means
Hmm.
that we're going to go through some serious trauma as a society, I think, before we come out the other end and actually decide to do things differently.
Yeah.
Um, some things are going to be too late. Though there's going to be a warming planet. We're going to lose a lot of habitat, not animal habitat, people habitat, and there's going to be a lot of hurt out there, a lot of struggle for resources and for livable land, and those sacrifices aren't going to be easy to watch. So, I feel like being someplace where I could build very intentional community and start to gather those resources around me and prepare, not just to survive myself, but to help others survive, I think is critical. And I don't believe I'm not a prepper as far as like I'm going to build a bunker and like ride this out by myself
Yeah.
because I don't want to spend 1 week in a underground bunker alone,
Fuck
like
that, dude. We need that vitamin D, those vitamin D rays.
honestly, I'd rather be dead. I don't want to die alone in a bunker.
Yeah.
And I think the only way to survive this with any sort of spirit is by joining community and figuring it out and dividing. dividing labor and dividing resources to make it work. And those sorts of things you're going to have to defend, and you're going to have to learn how to scale so you could bring as many people in
Yeah.
that come find you, because you're not just going to be able to wall everybody out. You're going to have to figure out a way that you could continue to replicate something like that to grow it and build it. Um, and I didn't feel like in the suburbs of Colorado Springs that I could have done that. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, moving to Maine, somewhere that's not susceptible to wildfire, that's not as dry, high
Hmm.
altitude, that's not a conservative, you know, fortress of Colorado Springs of right-wing military and Christian thought. I thought,
Yeah.
I had to get away from that stuff, and being by the ocean, surrounded by water and surrounded by green, one of the most wooded states in
Yeah.
the country, that I can walk to Canada if I really, really have to,
Hmm.
seemed like a pretty good option to me. So
Yeah.
I thought about leaving the United States entirely. I don't think there's anywhere in the world you can necessarily run to avoid all the problems. But I also feel like there's some sort of um, I don't know. I don't know if I'd be able to live with myself if I just ran away and used whatever privilege and luxury I had to escape everything. And I don't know.
That's a conflict that I like think about a lot myself.
Yeah.
It's like as much as I've like disdain for like the willful, ignorant portions of American culture, like I definitely am like a product of America and like so many people I love here and so many contemporaries, essentially that grew up within the same thing. So I'm always trying to figure out the divide. I want to continue to travel. Hopefully we stay in touch. And I'll let you know. I hope to get around the Middle East sometime soon. And there's obviously like an environmental impact with that. So, I'm always hitting the trade off in myself. Is this worth the cost? But hopefully, it all amounts to something, and I can be a force for good. You know, but I feel like we like in certain parts of the world, the foreign policy that I grew up under had such impact. Throughout the world, and I feel like I almost have this duty to talk to people on the ground and understand things to some extent. But yeah, man, it's cool that you're just getting close to nature. It's like I do feel like we're kind of entering kind of a deep winter here, um, but we can still find gratitude in putting our feet in the dirt and with you watching kids grow up and stuff like that, man. And as much as there will be many negative things ahead, maybe this will bring us closer to our fellow man in a way that will ultimately shake out and be good for us long term.
Mhm. Yeah, that's the hope. And yeah, I mean, if your intentions on travel is to better yourself, to better everybody else, I mean, we could do so much. We could only do so much by changing our personal habits when we're talking about the larger impacts of, like, climate and energy use and whatever. It's really policy and industry that has to change if we're really going to save the
Yeah.
planet. So I wouldn't burden yourself too much of guilt of taking a plane ride, especially if that opportunity is just to learn so much and to connect with people. I think there's still a place that we need to do that, and why not use the tools that we have to try to do it more effectively. But yeah, I don't know how long we're going to have those things. So,
Yeah.
my every trip you travel, especially overseas, to Europe, to Asia, to the Middle East, it might be your last opportunity to do it.
Hmm. Yeah, it's wild. It's almost as like you're almost like, and I read a lot of books too, so books are like a way to travel with the mind, I think, when you're stationary. But it's almost like you're entering some kind of big room, and like initially, like there's just like a couple lights on, but you can't see the rest of the room. And like each expansion of the perspective on a trip or whatever, or talking to somebody from across the world, it's like another light is illuminated and the room gets bigger. But then you kind of find out after a while that this is an endlessly big building. And it's like keep going and widening or whatever. So yeah, man, I have gratitude that I have the privilege and ability to be able to figure out a way to do it. And you're right, I really appreciate that feedback to really just cherish it. But man, I'm glad to hear that you're doing well. I think having a solid routine, working on our own mental health enables us to really just like be the best force possible in our day to day, bro. Like send out just positive waves with our energy and stuff like that. And I think you kind of had your season where you were out Veterans for Peace and with Cindy Sheehan and stuff like that after the fact. And like now it's not really like you're not abandoning those things, you're just changing the methodology to be more focused on that local organization. Like, how can I use my skills to help the people around me and build bonds and stuff like that? So that's dope, dude. Thanks for catching up with me. Thanks for making the time, man.
Yeah, for sure. This is great. It's been a while since I've done something like this. No, I appreciate the opportunity and circling back and finding me.
Cool, man. Well, let's keep in touch and best of luck with everything, dude.